Listen to your favorite shows live and on demand 24/7. Download the 77 WABC mobile app now. The Greg Kelly Show.
On that September day, we were unprepared. We did not grasp the magnitude of a threat that had been gathering over a considerable period of time. As we detail in our report, this was a failure of policy, management, capability, and above all, a failure of imagination.
That was the former governor of New Jersey, the great Tom Kean, speaking as the co-chair of the 9/11 Commission in 2004, 20 years ago. I sat down and actually read that report cover to cover. It's excellent. And there is a lot of blame to go around and lack of attention to detail and a lot of things. But yeah, I get that. A failure of imagination. That was the big headline. That all of our CIA analysts, all of our investigators, all of the security, everything that we've got, this great big military-industrial complex, right, couldn't get their hands around the notion that the bad guys would hijack a bunch of planes and fly them into buildings. It had never occurred to them before. But then it happened. So it was a failure of imagination. Hey, Tom Kean is a great guy. You know what I think of him? I think he's like a statesman, a true statesman. We don't have many of those, if any, right? New Jersey and you, perfect together. He was also great in those commercials. Now, failure of imagination, I totally get it. Okay? Yeah, we screwed up on 9/11. Actually, you know who really screwed up? George W. Bush. Because the system was going crazy. You know, actually, they got a memo. Bin Laden determined to attack U.S. using planes. Most men would have, I don't know, if I were in the Oval Office, I think I would have put the country on red alert. Something. He went back to that dopey ranch of his. So fast forward to today, yesterday more specifically, and this is the Secret Service director. I don't know if he found that line from the 9/11 Commission and thought, yeah, I can apply that to today. This is going to get us out of this jam. He applies that same line, failure of imagination. That's what went wrong in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's why President Trump got shot. Huh? Listen to this. This is the acting Secret Service director, Ronald Rowe, before the United States Senate. 23.
I've thought long and hard about this. I think this was a failure of imagination, a failure to imagine that we actually do live in a very dangerous world where people do actually want to do harm to our protectees.
Well, you're in the long line of work, pal. If you can't get your head around that, you have no business being in the security business. And Donald Trump is in jeopardy, real jeopardy. Something really bad could happen to him. I'm worried about him. We should pray for him. And it was a beautiful miracle that happened the other day. Hey, looks like Donald Trump is going to be taking the podium, going to be speaking in Chicago at something called the NABG, the National Association of Black Journalists. The National Association of Black Journalists. Now, number one, I'm glad that President Trump is speaking there. He should speak to any and all groups. Okay? Go for it. And go to where a person like President Trump might not be typically expected. That's one of the great things about this candidacy and why he may just win by a landslide, because he's going to places, talking to people that typical Republicans don't go and don't talk to. I like it. I love it, in fact. But what I don't like is that there is something called the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm sorry. Maybe I feel left out because I'm white. And quite frankly, there's no white journalist association. Not that I would ever join one because it sounds sick. But that sounds a little bit sick, too. And ultimately, it lets down the black journalists. It's no fun being in an association of black journalists, just like it would be no fun being in an association of white journalists. Here's what I mean. I have nothing special in common with anybody because we're white, right? That's not where these relationships come from. It's like, how do I put this? Okay, in the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps. And every now and then I'll get a resume from somebody. Hey, hire this guy. He's a Marine. I'm like, maybe. Maybe he was a jerk. I don't know. I met plenty of jerks in the Marine Corps. Hire this guy. He's black. NABJ. I don't know. Maybe he's a jerk. Plenty of jerks who are black. Plenty of jerks who are white. What do they sit around and talk about all day? They're pretending there's an alliance and an allegiance where one does not naturally exist. And that's my issue. And the other thing, yeah, it focuses on what divides us. But that's what the country is all about these days. Hey, is there anything divisive about baseball? It's a white supremacy, right? Wasn't Abner Doubleday a white supremacist? Didn't I see that? Well, anyway, the National Archives, I figure, okay, they're going to do a baseball exhibit. There's no way they can screw this one up. Nope, they sure can. They sure can. The National Archives, the deep state, the same people who called the cops because Donald Trump had paperwork from his presidency that he was entitled to. You ready for this? This is the one of the many people who are working for the federal government and getting paid by us who should not be getting paid by us, who shouldn't even have one of these things. The National Archives should be a great big filing cabinet, and that's it. Instead, we got crap like this. Go ahead.
Hi. Welcome to the Lawrence F. O'Brien Gallery at the National Archives Museum in Washington, D.C. I'm Alice Camps, curator of All-American, The Power of Sports. Let's go on a tour.
Now stop. You can't see this, but I can see this. It's all about the Negro Leagues and breaking barriers so far. That's what all the stuff is all about right there that you're seeing. By the way, she said, I didn't catch this the first time. She's at the Lawrence O'Brien Gallery at the National Archives. Who the hell is Lawrence O'Brien? Longtime chief of the Democrat National Committee. In fact, he was the guy whose office the Watergate burglars were trying to bug. All right, keep going. Cheesy music, by the way. Nice song, but cheesy. What is this? VH1 Jazz? Hey, whatever happened to adult contemporary music? Nobody ever talks about that anymore. All right, get back to the unattractive spokesmodel.
All-American is about how sports powered efforts to unite American citizens, to teach American values, and to promote the American way around the world. It's also about how athletes use their power to break social barriers and protest injustice.
See?
This panel is about the Trailblazers series of graphics. Look for them throughout the exhibit to learn how historic athletes paved the way for some of our contemporary heroes. The exhibit has 4 sections. Each explores a different power of sports. The first is the power to unite. The most dramatic example of this happened at Game 3 of the World Series in 2001.
Stop. This is the only exhibit. This part gives them license to do all the woke stuff they're about to do. All right, so they give a nod to George W. Bush in that pitch. Right? Remember that? That was pretty cool. And he went to the mound, right? He went all the way to the mound. Keep going.
Weeks after the attacks of 9/11, when President George Bush threw out the ceremonial first pitch at Yankee Stadium in New York City. After the pitch crossed the plate, the crowd burst into spontaneous chants of USA, USA, USA.
Don't even try.
President Bush said he'd never experienced anything so powerful. The highlight of this section is the New York Fire Department jacket that President Bush wore over a bulletproof vest during that historic event.
All right, stop. As you can see, this part is cool. All right. But trust me, it gets woke and weird really fast. Keep going.
For some of the 110,000 American citizens and residents of Japanese descent who were incarcerated during World War II, baseball was a way to proclaim their American identity.
What?
Here
Stop!
We have photos.
You see what I mean? Wait, what? What in the hell does baseball have to do with the Japanese internment during World War II? You get it? America is a racist, totalitarian, nasty country that locked up Japanese people during World War II. By the way, that was horrible. But do you make it part of the baseball exhibit? You see how they fooled us? Dude, 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 dude. George W. Bush threw out the baseball, yeah. We are a racist country to our core. Dude. Keep going.
Photos, newsletter articles, and a drawing of a baseball game by artist Mine Okubo that show the importance of baseball to camp life. Section 2 is about the power of sports to teach values like teamwork, fair play, and competition. Basketball was invented by James Naismith in 1891. It was so popular among both boys and girls that it quickly spread across the country. Soon there was a market for basketball equipment and people vying to patent it. Here's a 1925 patent for a portable goal, a big improvement on the original peach baskets that Naismith used. Hundreds of thousands of Native children were forced or coerced to attend boarding schools, many funded by the federal government. The goal of the school's programs has been described as kill the Indian, save the man.
Stop. Okay, you see the pattern? They do something, something appropriate for, appropriate and something horrific. Something appropriate and something horrific. Native Americans in boarding school? Kill the Indian? This is the sports exhibit. This is the sport. Oh, all right. Anyway, it's kind of amusing, but it's also dangerous. And if Kamala Harris, God forbid, somehow gets in, there's going to be. This is it. Oh, and you know who can actually turn this around? Well, the people. And also conservative media. Richard Nixon, great president. No, he wasn't really a great president. Great guy. I liked him. He did some good things and some bad things. This is in his interview with Frost Nixon. Listen to what he said.
Concentration of power in the United States today is not in the White House. It isn't in the Congress, and it isn't in the Supreme Court. It's in the media, and it's too much. Because it is too concentrated in too small a circle. You have, for example, the Washington Post owning not only the Washington Post, but the major all-news radio station and a television station in Washington and a major national magazine, Newsweek. You have CBS with its affiliates. You have NBC, controlled by one of the largest corporations of the country. You have ABC. You have, of course, Time Inc. And everybody knows their stroke. With that concentration of power, let me say, particularly in the television area, in the networks, it's too much. It's power that the founding fathers would have been very concerned about.
Well, fortunately, the media has diversified a lot since then. I mean, not diversified, but branched out. There's more media. However, the bulk of it and the ones who control the agenda. Hey, do me a favor. Can we go to Trump real quick before we go to break? Here he is at the Black Journalists Jamboree.
You couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner. I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
Give me a
definition then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition of
Sir,
that.
I'm asking you a question,
a
very direct question.
Define it for me, if you would.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
but
identified as a black woman.
I respect
she went to a historically
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't. because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe
I think somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans
I really don't
have
know.
said?
I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length. And we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that
Well,
interview.
you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today.
Wow, hold on a second. All right. He was flubbing it. It was one of those rare moments where he was flubbing something. Define DEI. It was a legitimate question, and he got a little bit nasty. He did. But then he saved it because what's-her-name has identified herself as an Indian. He saved it. It didn't have to be so nasty to that. He got a little nasty. Hey, that's all right. We all can get a little nasty, and everyone's coming at him. Sometimes it's hard when somebody doesn't come at you to realize they're not coming at you. You think, if everyone's coming at you, everybody must be coming at me, and I understand that. Anyway, interesting. We're going to have more of that and a lot of other stuff in a moment.
Greg Kelly. This is the Greg Kelly Show.
All right, wait a second. Big news may be erupting at this NABJ thing, which I'm not a fan of, National Association of Black Journalists. I wouldn't be a fan of the National Association of White Journalists. I think it's ultimately disappointing to black journalists because, black people don't have anything more in common than white people, right? We're all from all over the place. Uh-oh. All right, so he got – hold on. He's getting really – it was really difficult between him and Rachel Scott. Now, I just sent you the Rachel Scott thing. I thought Trump was a little bit nasty, quite frankly, and that's okay. We all, make mistakes or whatever. However, it looks like he may have been provoked into the nastiness. He didn't fire first. I want to hear this. Rachel Scott is with the ABC News fake news. I don't really have an opinion of her. Let me think. She does a lot of congressional coverage. But he's sitting down live in Chicago with the panel. 3 black women. I mean, I'm sorry, if you call it the National Association of Black Journalists, I'm going to say there are 3 black women. One of them is Harris Faulkner. We like her. Rachel Scott, I'm neutral. I don't know who the other one is. But this is erupting. This is potentially erupting into both good news and bad news. Let me see what the hell is going on. I'll straighten it all out, and I'll be right back with it.
Listening to the Greg Kelly Show.
Am I right? I think I got to the bottom of it. The National Association of Black Journalists tried to set Donald Trump up, and they lost big time. All right, so I got the moment. It's ongoing right now, and listen to this. This is the start of the NABJ summit, whatever. National Association of Black Journalists. Go ahead.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and, and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late, just so we understand. I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working, or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you could answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe
I have answered the question. I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work.
This is like Megyn Kelly, the Megyn Kelly moment, the Rosie O'Donnell moment. James, what'd you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that he's absolutely right in the sense that he references that he was invited to what he knew was going to be a sort of contentious environment, more than willing and happy to be there. And he immediately pushed back on ABC and where that messaging was coming from, immediately pushed back on the concept of fake news, which I think is such an important aspect of the MAGA identity.
Look, you can ask him tough questions, but he's right. You kind of warm up to it, especially a symposium like that.
It was an attack question.
Well, and also, look, the whole thing with Barack Obama, that is a dozen years old now. It's 12 years old. Actually, more than that. It's at 13 years old, going to that controversy. And also saying some stuff that isn't necessarily, she's saying half the truth. You called the DA animal. You called Alvin Bragg an animal. Well, he's also called George Soros an animal. Mm-hmm. He's always called, it's irrespective of race. Let's turn it up live for a moment, if you don't mind. This is he's still going. I loved it, by the way.
The vice president, in terms of the election, does not have any impact.
Mm-hmm.
Virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think J.D. is. I think that all of them would have been. But you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in.
J.D. Vance?
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in. To your point and to Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, my point is here.
But at least it was said in a friendly manner.
My point is...
she said it in a friendly manner. Right?
The Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what J.D. Vance is saying.
I don't think, I think that the Democrat Party is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the death of a baby after the baby is born, based on the governor of Virginia. Based on the governor of Virginia, they're allowing the death of the baby after it's born. They're allowing abortions in the 8th and 9th month.
Well, Democrats have denied.
I think they're right. And I think the Republican Party is actually much less. I think I've made them much less radical, perhaps, but the Republican Party, what we're doing is bringing it back to the states where everybody wanted it. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservative, everybody wanted abortion brought back. They didn't want Roe v. Wade in the federal government. They wanted it. Everybody
But the majority of
back.
Americans oppose Roe v. Wade being overturned.
They
Multiple
don't know
polls have
about
showed that,
this.
sir.
Right now, they're voting. It brought it back to the states. Now, I happen to believe in the three exceptions. Ronald Reagan believed with rape, incest, life of the mother. I do. I think most people do. I think most Republicans do also. But if you take a look, right now they're doing, it's an amazing thing, out of the federal government, it's in states, and people are voting. And I will say, Ohio is, let's call it a more liberal version, has been approved. Kansas, the same thing, a little bit surprising to a lot of people. But the people are now voting. And it's taking this issue that's been going on for 52 years and has torn our country apart, and it's giving it to the people to vote on. And they're voting. And many states have already voted. Others are in the process of voting. And it's bringing it back to the people and a vote of the people. And it's not at all radical. And again, you have to follow your heart. I happen to believe in the three exceptions. Most people believe in the three exceptions. Most Republicans believe in the exceptions. But they don't want to see an abortion in the 9th month or the 8th month. Almost everybody agrees to that. And they certainly don't want to see, in the case of the governor of Virginia, the former governor, I might add, who said, we set the baby aside and then we decide what to do. Meaning, what do? We execute the baby. That's a radical, horrible position. And some people want that. I don't want it. Most people don't.
Thank you. Can I just pivot really quickly to another
What do you think, man?
I think he's handling all these questions extremely well, but these are some of the same attacks they continue to levy at him, and he understands that these attacks are coming. In other words, it's a democratic notion to decide what the abortion laws are supposed to be.
I agree. Turn up the volume.
Is right now.
But not mentally. Look, mentally.
Here's the question.
He shot.
Biden.
But most people.
Would you consider?
Most people. I know many people in their 80s and their 90s that are in great shape. Some of our greatest leaders. You look at throughout the world history, the greatest leaders, some of the greatest leaders in the world were in their 80s.
But here's the question. Would you consider stepping down if you felt that your health was declining? Or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would?
I think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated me.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That wasn't a question. She didn't ask me a question. She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated your statement, sir, actually.
You said you would. You would.
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If I
to step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take nasty. That wasn't a question. She didn't ask me a question. She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated your
Hiccup.
statement, sir, actually.
You said you would. You would.
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If
to
I
step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take an aptitude test, to take a cognitive test. I think it's a great idea. And I took 2 of them and I aced them.
Well,
I took 2 of them. But let me ask you.
Yeah.
I would like to have people running for president, and I don't mean because they're 75 or 85. I think anybody running, I'd like to do it. People say it's not constitutional. I would like to have something passed where you can do it. I think we should know. I mean, I've watched what's happened in the last couple of years under this gentleman, and our country is a mess. We have inflation. We have the millions of people falling in. We have Afghanistan, which was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. What he has done to our country, and her too, what they've done to our country, she has been a horrible vice president. She's considered the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but would you consider taking the cognitive test?
Mr. President.
I would love to
and
do
make
it
public.
Well, I've already taken 2 of them, but I'll do it again.
Mr. President, how do you intend to...
I suggested, Harris, that let's take one. I said, Joe and I will go and take a cognitive test. Now, I'd do it with her, too. I would do it with her also. You know what? she failed her law exam. She didn't pass her law exam, so maybe she wouldn't pass the cognitive test.
Mr. President, are you saying she wouldn't pass? Just to be clear,
I'm just giving you the facts.
To be clear, you don't think Harris would
How do you intend?
She didn't pass her bar exam, and she didn't think she would pass it, and she didn't think she was going to ever pass it. And I don't know what happened. Maybe she passed it.
She did pass it.
There's a man over here. I think he must work.
Mr. President, I would love to ask you about January 6th.
Here we go.
You called yourself the candidate of law and order. Yeah. When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes. Absolutely. Sure. You called them patriots.
Yeah.
140 police officers were assaulted that day. Their injuries included broken bones. At least one officer lost an eye. One had 2 cracked ribs.
It's not true, actually,
2
but
smashed
the eye.
spinal discs. Another had a stroke. Were the people who assaulted those 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol. You saw the people that were protesting and spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone and granite with red paint, red spray paint that will never actually come off, especially in the limestone. It will never, I'm a builder, I know about this stuff. It'll never, you'll see it in 100 years from now. They viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed that city?
But, sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to the people that tried to burn
rioters who assaulted officers.
You have to
would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You would pardon those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just well, they were convicted by a very tough system. How come the people that tried to burn down Minneapolis, how come the people that took over a large percentage of Seattle, how come nothing happened to them? How come the people
sir, we're talking about people that were seen beating officers with flagpoles, dragging them down the stairs. They're on video. Have you seen that video, sir?
Oh, really? Well,
you would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was protesting. They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day. You do know that. But people died in Seattle. Nobody died, but people died in Minneapolis. You know people died in Minneapolis. And nothing happens, and nobody ever talks, and nothing happens to those people. But you went after the J6 people with a vengeance. And I'll tell you what about the cops that were, and I'm all for the police, as you know, but what about the police that are ushering everybody into the Capitol? Go in, go in, go in. What about that? Look, nothing is perfect in life, but you have people from Minneapolis, you have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C., they were having fistfights and fighting with the police. They were spraying and destroying, they were desecrating our monuments in Washington, D.C. 5 days ago, and nothing happened to them. And you can't have two systems of justice. That's why they went after me as a political opponent, because they felt they couldn't win without doing that. And we're going to win our cases, and we're going to be vindicated. But I have to spend a lot of time on that and money. That's what they want. After the election, they won't care. Although in my case, I think they probably will, because the hatred is pretty deep. But I'll tell you, they went after me as a political opponent. That's never happened in our country before, and it sets a terrible, terrible precedent.
What do you do on day one if you win? What's your first thing?
What do? I close the border. And I do two things, because I can do a lot of things simultaneously. I close the border. We don't want people coming in. We want people to come in, Harris, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. They have to come in legally. I want people to come into our country, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. So when you say, what do? That, and I drill, baby, drill. I bring energy way down. I bring interest rates down. I bring inflation way down so people can buy bacon again, so people can buy a ham sandwich again, so that people can go to a restaurant and afford it. Because right now, people can't buy food. Your grocery bills are up 40, 50, 60%, right? She's agreeing to me. Oh, she's agreeing. Thank you. I like you very much.
Mr. President, I think we are.
But it's true. Your grocery bills are up. And then they're mandating that you buy an all-electric car. You know, Elon Musk endorsed me, and he's a friend of mine.
I'm worried about him on that stage. I'm now worried about him whenever he's in public.
Everybody having an electric car, okay? I'm very much against that. You have to be able to, if you want a hybrid or if you want a gasoline-propelled car. But, we have more liquid gold, gasoline, oil, under our feet than any other country. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than any other country. I want to use it. All
right, we got to go. He's just wrapping up, too. He says goodbye to everybody, and this is, fake news is going to go bananas over that. Oh, how dare he disrespect that woman, blah, 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 blah. But no, he was totally within bounds to say what he said, how he said it. The question was totally over the top. And, you don't say a lot of people thought it was inappropriate to invite you. The first thing you say to a guy who accepted your invitation. So good for him. More to come. 800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. Thank you, James.
Greg Kelly. This is the Greg Kelly Show.
We're starved for authenticity. It's one of the reasons why Trump does so well. Somebody asks you a rude question, you have to just go along with it. So many politicians, saccharine, fake. And I loved it. There's going to be a lot more on this whole thing at the Black Journalists Association. But Barbara is standing by. Welcome back, our wise Barbara. What's going on?
Hey, hi, Greg. Yes, I loved hearing Trump deal with that because he's truthful and he's frank and he's forward and he's so smart. He is really a super smart guy. I love to hear that. But, hey, I've been thinking all evening and today about something you said at the end of the show yesterday when a caller said that you need to react to everything that is said that's wrong, that's a lie. And you pointed out that you and we cannot be reactive. We also have to be proactive, and that we have to establish our own narrative. And I was thinking about that, and I know you've done that. I know you do that in your programming. We see that all the time. We've learned so much from you. But now that this assassination attempt happened, I find that a lot more people are open to discussing and to being rational about Trump. And so we need our own personal narrative, each of us. So, for example, my personal narrative when I'm talking with someone, and not talking about someone who is afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome, because using reason with someone like that is like administering medicine to the dead, as Thomas Paine said. But someone who is open to reason, I'm going to talk to them about Trump's ending the dying, that there were no wars when we were under Trump, that he wants to end the dying around the world, that he wants to strengthen our military, that he wants to continue to stand by our ally Israel, that he wants to secure the borders, which is good for all of us, that he will lower gasoline and all energy costs and thus end the raging increase in inflation that's devastating us, that he wants school choice for everyone. I mean, I've got a list of like a dozen things. So depending on who I'm talking to, I can go to about what is good for this country, what is good for the nation, and pull out these things one by one and relate to them. I have somebody who has 6 granddaughters, and I can say to this person, you don't want your granddaughter to have to play basketball against a transgender who is a foot taller and much heavier and going to hurt your granddaughter.
Yep, the issues. Know the issues. The issues are black and white. You know what I mean? It's fascinating. Barbara, there's the music. We got to go. Well done, President Trump. Fight, fight, fight.